move on to the amended 58C, which is interim zoning regulations for recreational marijuana uses per initiative 502.
Thank you, Mayor. I'd like to refer the council and the audience to the late agenda packet that we provided this evening. The first item, 8C, it contains an agenda bill prepared by Chip Davis, our Community Development Director, and I'm going to let Chip explain what the staff is proposing. Before he starts, I would just like to mention that in your packet also are two alternative ordinances. One is a moratorium ordinance, and the other is an interim zoning ordinance. Both deal with recreational marijuana uses that could potentially be allowed pursuant to the State Liquor Control Board's regulations that have not yet gone into effect, but that would provide for a 30-day application period for retail, growing, and processing uses for recreational marijuana. And as the council may know, a number of cities, in fact many, if not most cities in our state, are grappling with how to deal with the land use impacts of what the Liquor Control Board is implementing, because that isn't a part of what they're doing. The moratorium ordinance, and again, I'm going to let Chip explain this in detail, but I want to just give you a quick overview here. The moratorium ordinance would basically say that the city would not allow any of the potential uses that the Liquor Control Board could license for up to 6 months, during which time we would study proposed regulations. On the other hand, the interim zoning regulation, or interim zoning ordinance, would on an interim basis, which would go into effect immediately upon your adoption of this, allow those licensed uses to occur, but with a type 1 administrative review, which is the review process conducted by the Community Development Director. And following the adoption of this ordinance, we would have to come back to the council, have a public hearing, and then it would be up to the public to provide input and for the council to decide what you want to adopt on a permanent basis. So with that, I would like to turn this over to Chip for a more detailed explanation, and also mention that Anne Marie Soto drafted these two ordinances, and she is available to answer questions about the legal provisions in them. Thank you.
Thank you very much, and good evening. Initiative 502, which was approved by Washington voters on November 6th of last year, provides a legal recreational marijuana market and will include recreational marijuana producers, processors, and retailers in a market that will be regulated by the Washington State Liquor Control Board. The Liquor Control Board issued draft rules on July 3rd, and revised final rules are scheduled to be issued on September 4th. Following a 6-week public comment period, formal adoption of rules is scheduled for October 16th, with the rules taking effect 1 month later on November 16th. On November 18th, the Liquor Control Board will open a 30-day window in which they will accept and process applications for recreational marijuana producers, processors, and retailers, with the first licenses scheduled to be issued by December 18th of this year. The draft rules indicate that the Liquor Control Board will implement recreational marijuana licensing in a manner similar to liquor licensing procedures, and they will review license applications for compliance with state laws and to ensure separation of licensees from certain public and private facilities. But they've indicated they will not interfere with local zoning powers. Since Burien's municipal code is silent regarding recreational marijuana uses, we are not able at this time to provide appropriate direction to prospective applicants regarding the siting of recreational marijuana facilities once they are licensed by the state. The production, growth, processing, and retailing of recreational marijuana may present land use and public safety issues for licensed locations, as well as for surrounding properties. So enacting local zoning regulations will ensure proper placement and operations of these uses, which is both necessary and appropriate public function. Potential land use and public safety issues include, but are not limited to, appropriate signage, applicable zoning codes, locational restrictions, density, spacing requirements, and appropriate zones for growing, processing, and distributing recreational marijuana, and separation from schools and other facilities where children are present. Staff has examined 3 potential options to address the issue of recreational marijuana. First one is do nothing and rely on existing zoning ordinance language to address locating recreational marijuana businesses. The second is to adopt a moratorium to provide time to further study the issue before adopting permanent regulations. Or the third, adopt interim zoning regulations. At this time, staff is recommending that the City Council adopt 6-month interim regulations, which will immediately put into place zoning regulations for locating recreational marijuana uses in Burien and provide sufficient time to study, draft, and hold public hearings on permanent regulations. At this point, we would be happy to answer any questions you might have regarding this recommendation.
Mayor, one thing I'd like to just mention is that I think it's in the last week, the Liquor Control Board has announced that the proposed regulations that they were ready to adopt, they decided to delay that process for another 6 weeks or 2 months, I believe. So we may not actually be seeing any licenses be issued until early next year. But nonetheless, staff still feels that the responsible approach for Burien to take is to adopt the interim regulations right now so that we can give, as Chip indicated, direction both to our residents and to potential licensees who are interested in locating in Burien. Well, one other thing I have to mention is that staff, Chip, as well as Fernando Lamas, our GIS specialist, have looked at the provision in Initiative 502 that has the 1,000-foot prohibition for these uses to locate near schools, parks, daycares, similar locations. And those 1,000-foot circles will significantly limit locations that these uses could locate in Burien.
Could we go ahead and suggest a motion?
I move to adopt ordinance number 586, establishing 6-month interim zoning regulations for recreational marijuana uses pursuant to Washington State Initiative 502.
Okay. Any discussion of the motion? Councilmember Robison.
I'd like to just comment on, I think the reaction to this may be a little overblown. We're not going to end up with unregulated marijuana businesses in the city, whether we do anything or not. However, I've spent some time over the last couple of weeks going over the state statute and also over ordinances, and there are a couple of things we need to do in our zoning ordinances that I think are necessary. And I think this interim zoning ordinance is the best way to deal with that so that we can have that discussion in public, get the input we need, and carefully consider what we're going to do. I don't think the first option works at all. Doing nothing leaves certain questions open that we can't really leave open, particularly with relationship to businesses opening up in areas that are currently non-conforming businesses in them that are similar to what someone might do under the statute. And I think a moratorium is just lazy legislating. So I'm in favor of the interim zoning regulation, and I appreciate all the work staff did on it. I think it may be a little more than we needed, but I think that's the best way to address this.
Councilmember Block.
Yeah, I support the interim zoning also. I feel it's totally appropriate. The voters have spoken. And as Councilmember Robison has pointed out, the world hasn't ended. Marijuana's been legal for 8 months now. Hempfest was a success. They handed out Doritos, the police did. But I've seen a map of the areas that where marijuana will be legal to sell at, and it's a very, very, very small area in the city, approximately 136 and First Avenue South, the area just south of 148th and Ambom, and a small area where the old liquor store is at the shopping mall at Albertsons on 160th. So it's a very, very small area. We're not going to have marijuana shops open on every corner. And it's important to note also that Odyssey is operated where on 149th and Elmont for 35, 40 years. So, you know, that clientele is already accustomed to being in that area. So, you know, Burien hasn't come to an end. This will not mean the end of the world. It will mean a small change for us. We'll have legal marijuana stores, and quite frankly, I think it beats the present system now, where people go and buy it through drug dealers and support organized crime. I think it's a better system, and I think we're all going to benefit in the long term from it. So I can support the zone change.
Councilmember Block.
As you're putting this forward, it's a 6-month ordinance. How does that timing mesh with what the state is doing? If the state isn't making a decision until December, is it going to be appropriate to do 6 months?
We may need to come back to you and ask to extend the 6-month period.
I would
But-
appreciate
yeah.
having that ability to do it.
Right.
I just want to make sure all pieces fit together correctly.
Right.
Thank you.
Okay, with that, can we go ahead and register votes on the motion?